Welcome to the Deep Brain Podcast. Briefing. There are two conversations happening in America today. There's the one you see on television, the shouting, the slogans, the managed outrage. It's designed to distract you, to exhaust you, and to keep you from noticing the second conversation. The second conversation is happening quietly. It's happening in boardrooms, in policy memos, and on secure servers. It's the conversation about how things actually move. It's not about left versus right. It's about who has leverage and who doesn't. This is that second conversation for the next 3 hours. We are pulling back the curtain. No talking points, no slogans, just a continuous straight through look at the mechanics of power. And it might not be the full 3 hours because I'll go through all this information way before that. But let's get into it. The current state of play and what it means for every free citizen in this republic. Let's begin. The invisible structure. Something has shifted, and it's not subtle anymore. You can feel it in how fast narratives move, how quickly institutions react, how little patience there is for disagreement, and how often decisions get justified. This is why we're seeing a collapse in public trust, and we need to understand this is not a tragedy, it's a rational and healthy verdict from the American people. The polls show a multi-decade trend of declining faith in government and media for a simple reason. These institutions have been captured by a leftist, collectivist ideology that is openly hostile to the principles of this republic. People aren't losing faith. They are recognizing betrayal. They are correctly identifying that these institutions no longer serve them. And they are turning instead to what they can trust: their families, their local communities, their faith. This leads to the next layer of control: the information itself. It no longer spreads organically. It's sequenced. Stories appear simultaneously across platforms with identical framing, identical moral cues, identical conclusions. This isn't journalism. This is information warfare waged against the citizens of this country. Independent outlets repeat the narratives because not repeating them carries professional risk, and we already talked about this in my last live. So that's the invisible structure. Now we're going to pull the lens back and look at how that machinery is operating on the world stage right now in February 2026. We'll start with the topic that affects every American wallet: inflation. The official story is that it's cooling, but sticky. What they don't tell you is that the stickiness is by design. The number one driver isn't just monetary policy. It's the structural realignment of the entire global trade system. We are deliberately moving away from the hyper-efficient globalized supply chain of the last 30 years into a fragmented system of friend-shoring and politically driven trade blocs. Building that redundancy is expensive, and those costs are being permanently baked into the price of everything you buy. Add to that the massive ongoing fiscal deficits and the hidden cost of tariffs, and you have a recipe for persistent inflation that the Fed cannot easily control with interest rates alone. This brings us to global politics. While the news focuses on the headline conflicts, the real story is the quiet information of new agile alliances. The old G7 or G20 world is being replaced by smaller coalitions of middle powers and corporations, laser focused on one thing: controlling the supply of critical minerals. The map of who controls lithium, cobalt, nickel, and rare earth elements is the true map of the 21st century power. This is why geopolitical confrontation is now seen by executives as the number one global risk, dwarfing other concerns because it directly threatens their ability to source materials and access markets. This uncertainty is paralyzing the American economy from the inside. The labor market is now described as frozen or in a low fire state. That's not just a statistic, that's a signal of deep executive hesitation. It's a quiet capital strike. Companies with cash on hand are not making big investments or expanding their workforce because the political and regulatory risk, driven by an activist administrative state, is simply too high to calculate. They are waiting. This directly connects to what we saw at the end of 2025. Corporate leaders were getting squeezed from both sides, locked in higher costs from their scrambled supply chains and a tight labor market combined with a slowing economy that made it impossible to pass those costs to the consumer. The focus wasn't on growth, it was on survival and margin protection. And the final piece of the puzzle is the two-speed global economy. While our economy is being deliberately frozen by uncertainty, real growth is happening in the Asia Pacific and other emerging regions. Trillions of dollars in capital and infrastructure are being deployed to service these new hubs of productivity. The world is reconfiguring itself, and if you're only watching the mainstream news in the West, you're missing the biggest story on the planet. We're at the end of our few minutes on the podcast, and we've mapped the invisible structure in the current battlefield. Now, let's move on to the third part, the path forward. It's not enough to diagnose the problem. We will lay out the blueprint for victory. We will talk about how to build a parallel economy, how to reclaim our institutions from the ground up, starting with our towns and counties, and how to personally insulate ourselves and our families from the chaos they are engineering. This isn't about survival. It's about building the world we want, right under the noses of the people who think they're in control. Stay with us. Give me a second, y'all. Let me get settled. We're going to jump back on some more information I got for you guys right now. So stay tuned. Alrighty, well, we're going to end this podcast right here, and I'll be back on to continue this conversation with you all. Matter of fact, got the information right now. Okay, so there's a battlefield more important than any piece of territory. It's the 2 feet of ground you stand on, the 4 walls of your home, the minds of your children, the dollars in your bank account. They know that if they can conquer the household, they don't need to conquer the country. Today, we teach you how to make that ground unconquerable. Welcome back to the Deep Brain Podcast. In our last sessions, we laid out the blueprint of the invisible structure and mapped the current global battlefield. We showed you how they operate and what they are doing. Today, we bring the fight home. This entire episode is dedicated to the most important front in this war, the sovereign household. This isn't about metaphors. It's a practicable, actionable strategy for hardening your family, your finances, and your freedom against the systemic assault being waged against them. The globalists and collectivists want you dependent, weak, and compliant. We will give you the tools to become resilient, strong, and independent. To help us with the critical financial component, I've brought in some information from a gentleman we'll call Marcus. He's a financial advisor who operates outside the Wall Street machine, specializing in wealth preservation and asset protection for clients who understand the real risk we face. Now, I'm going to give some information that was discussed this week between me and Mr. Marcus. So, let's get right into it. The foundation of any sovereign unit is its economic strength. But most people's financial lives are built on a foundation of sand. A dollar that's being systemically devalued, a banking system pushing woke politics, and a stock market that feels more like a casino. Let's talk about building what I call a fortress balance sheet. What does that mean to you? A fortress balance sheet is one that is designed to withstand shocks, not just chase returns. For the last 40 years, the average investor has been trained to do one thing: put money in a 401k filled with stocks and bonds. That strategy works fine in a world of stable currency and low political risk. That is not the world we live in now. The first principle of the fortress is to hold a meaningful allocation of tangible assets. We're talking about physical gold and silver. This is not about getting rich off a price spike. This is your insurance policy against currency failure and systemic crisis. It's a non-digital, non-sovereign asset that has preserved wealth for 5,000 years. It cannot be printed by a central bank, and it cannot be deplatformed by a payment processor. And it's something that he holds physically, not a paper ETF that claims to hold it for you. So as Marcus said, he said, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. The second principle is to reduce your exposure to the Wall Street casino. That means looking at assets that have real-world utility, productive farmland, investment-grade real estate in politically stable, conservative areas, even strategic investments in private, patriot-owned businesses that are building the parallel economy we've talked about. You want your wealth tied to things that produce real value, not just financial instruments that can evaporate overnight, he says. So he's building a balance sheet that can survive even if the dollar market and the banks all have a very bad decade. Marcus said, it's about diversifying out of their system. If all your assets are digital dollars held in a woke bank and invested in a stock market run by BlackRock and Vanguard, you don't have a fortress, you have a cage. That's the financial pillar, Marcus said. But a fortress is useless if the people inside don't have the will to defend it. The second pillar of the sovereign household is ideological fortification, and that starts with our children. They are subjecting our kids to psychological warfare campaign. From the moment they enter the school system, they are taught to hate their country, to be confused about their own biology, and to see themselves as either an oppressor or a victim. This is not education. It is ideological grooming, designed to create a generation of compliant, demoralized citizens who will not question authority. The single most powerful act of rebellion you can take is to pull your children out of that system. Homeschool them. From a co-op, find a solid, classical Christian school, take responsibility for their education. You must teach them the things the state will not. Teach them real American history, the story of sacrifice, heroism, and the pursuit of a divinely inspired ideal of liberty, not the 1619 Project's Marxist fiction. Teach them logic and critical thinking so they can dismantle the absurdities of woke ideology on their own. Teach them timeless virtues, courage, discipline, integrity, and faith. A child who is grounded in these virtues is immune to their propaganda. They want to raise sheep who will follow them off a cliff. We must raise lions who will defend the pride. This is not a secondary task for a parent. In the current year, it is the primary task. So, Marcus said, we've secured our finances and started to secure our children's minds. But we're living in a digital panopticon. Big tech is a surveillance arm of the state. How do you factor this digital risk into a person's overall sovereignty plan? It's a massive and overlooked liability. People have financial assets and private documents stored on platforms like Google Drive. They have their entire social media and business life tied to Facebook. And I can say I've been guilty of that myself too as well. And I'm pretty sure we all are, because we weren't, or we're probably not aware of these type of things. But they use Gmail for sensitive communications, right? From a risk management perspective, this is indefensible. We've seen people get deplatformed and locked out of their entire digital lives overnight for holding the wrong political opinion. If your assets can be taken away with a keystroke, are they really your assets? Think of that. So to that I asked them, So, what's the answer? He responded, the same principle as finance: diversify and decentralize. Stop using a single company for everything. We have to de-Google our lives. Use encrypted, privacy-focused email services like Proton Mail. Use encrypted messaging apps like Signal instead of Facebook Messenger. Run your own cloud server at home or use a secure system like sync.com. Instead of Google Drive, use a privacy-respecting browser like Brave. Or another one that I like to use every now and then is DuckDuckGo. But there's a variety of them, and you can just do your own research based on your personal needs or wants. So every piece of data you deny them is a small victory. Every communication you move to a secure channel is you taking back ground. Digital sovereignty isn't about being a tech genius. It's about a conscious decision to stop feeding the beast that is trying to devour you. It is a critical part of a holistic defense strategy. This brings us to the final pillar: a strong balance sheet. A strong family and digital privacy are essential, but they must be grounded in the real world. You can't eat gold. The last few years have shown us how fragile our just-in-time delivery systems are. Food shortages, supply chain breakdowns, power grid instability, these are no longer theoretical threats. Physical preparedness is not about fringe doomsday prepping. It is the logical conclusion of a sovereign mindset. It is the adult version of having an insurance policy. It means ensuring your family can thrive, not just survive through a 30-day disruption. It starts with the basics: water. Have a reliable water filter and a stored supply. Food. Build a deep pantry of non-perishable foods your family will actually eat. Don't just buy buckets of slop you'll never touch. Learn to grow some of your own foods, even if it's just a small garden. Learn basic first aid. Learn how to defend yourself and your family. Learn a practical, hands-on skill that will have value when the digital world goes dark. Get to know your neighbors. Build a network of trusted people you can rely on. The lone wolf dies. The well-organized community endures. This is the ultimate expression of decentralized strength. So there you have it. He provided us with the 4 pillars of the sovereign household: a fortress balance sheet built on tangible, resilient assets, a family that raises lions, not sheeps, grounded in truth and virtue, a digital life that protects your privacy and denies data to our enemies, a physical preparedness plan that ensures real-world self-reliance. This is not a checklist to be completed in a weekend. It is a new way of life. It is declaration of independence from a corrupt and failing system. And that's what Marcus had to say. So for everyone listening, start today. Pick one area and make one improvement. Fortify your position, because strong sovereign households are the bricks from which we rebuild this republic.